Hello, welcome everybody. SF Live episode 163. It's Monday. Happy Monday. Also means Expert Monday. I'm joined by James Kwantes. He's editor and publisher of Resource Opportunities. He'll be joining us in a few short seconds. But before we get started, let me remind you of a couple things. First, we're hosting Session 8 this coming Wednesday, April 14th, and Session 8 of SF Online, of course, which is our monthly mini conference series. We've got two fantastic keynote speakers, Lynn Alden and Tavi Costa. They're going to give us a really good overview of the macroeconomic environment. What does monetary supply growth do to inflation rates? What does it do to the gold price? What does it do to our investments? And as you can see on the screen, we've got 9 fantastic companies joining us as well. I'm really excited about those because I think those companies will be performing quite well over the summer and into the fall. So I'm really excited to get more detail on their equity stories. Don't forget to register, soarfinancial.com/events. And we'll see you all Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. Pacific or 3 p.m. German time. Now, with that out of the way, let me do the last part, and that's to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and Twitter channels, of course. We do all our interviews live, so if you turn on the bell notification as well, you'll get notified when we go live with our update. You'll hear firsthand whose top picks are from James Kwantes this morning, and of course, you'll hear straight from the CEOs when we interview them. But enough of me quabbling on here. Let me switch over to Mr. James Kwantes and welcome him to the program. James, wonderful. Good morning. How are you doing?
Hi, Kai. Good. How you doing?
I just noticed that my main camera died again. It did that last week as well, and I don't know why. Let me switch cameras real quick. There we go. Sure. I'm going to be talking to this camera now. It's going to be a little awkward. It's going to be a little weird because I'm not looking directly at you, James. But let's do it that way.
Okay.
No, I'm doing great actually. Thanks for asking. Weather is picking up here in Vancouver, so.
Yeah, the sun's shining, but that wind is still pretty cold.
Oh, it is actually. Like I was out at Stanley Park and it was blowing hard. So, but at least the vitamin D gets supplied plenty now. So let's see what the impact there is. But James, great to have you on the show. You're a first-time guest. As I said, you're the editor and publisher of Resource Opportunities. And why don't you give us a bit of an overview? Like, who are you and what does Resource Opportunities do?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, Kai. So I took over Resource Opportunities in 2015. So a bit of background, I come out of, I'm not a geologist, not an engineer, but I come out of journalism. So I was in newspapers for 20 years, the last 10 years at the Vancouver Sun. And so I guess how I got onto Resource Opportunities is, it was kind of like the intersection of my interest in the stock market and the intersection of the markets with being in Vancouver, an exploration hub. And just the fascinating characters and stories. And here I am. I didn't set out to write a newsletter, but that's what I'm doing. So at the Sun, I was I did different things, primarily as an editor, but I was a business reporter there and mining writer. And for the last about year and a half at the Vancouver Sun, I was an editor 4 days a week. They'd only give me 1 day a week to write about mining. And so I had to be pretty selective with who I interviewed. And so I focused, on people who created shareholder value and who got stuff done. And so that was good, actually, preparation for the newsletter. So I took it over in 2015, been doing it for 5 years now. So it was founded by Lawrence Rolston, who's a geologist. So my take is I have a slightly different perspective or angle, obviously. And I also went to a hybrid business model. So I have a paid monthly newsletter, as well as a small number of company sponsors to pay the bill. So I have 2 sponsors right now.
Okay, fantastic. No, thanks for running us through the background there. It's really interesting. In Vancouver Sun, like not everybody has a journalistic background who's running actually newsletters. So the content and quality obviously is quite high. Run us through a bit like your learning curve as well. Like, as you said, you run into some interesting characters, and mining, of course, is not just zeros and ones as well, right? So run us through some of your biggest wins and losers as well. Like that's where you usually learn, and like from the losses usually, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been like you say, wins and losses. I mean, this business, there's the winners compensate for the losses, but it's a speculative industry. But like one of the good things about going into a bull market is you can miss out on great stories and pick up your own great stories. But then it also brings out the hype and promo and some of the more negative aspects of the business. So I guess one of an early kind of win was Next Gen. Lawrence picked it up, I think, at 30 cents. When I took over the newsletter, I think it was at 40 or 45 cents. So it's trading above $5. Looks like a good uranium market. I like to find my own ideas and companies that are under the radar that other people don't cover, that are little known, but you can go too far that way. Like Kamenak, for example, is a story that I liked. It had all the ingredients, and but everybody was already covering it. So Great Bear's one that I picked up at just under $4, I guess, a couple years ago. And again, there I wasn't early. I wasn't covering it under a dollar and so on, but it just at a certain point, things clicked and it really it made sense and resonated with me. So that there's an example of a company doing really good good work, like in what's a weak market for gold. They spun out the 2% NSR into Great Bear Royalties, and that started trading last week and had a really good week. I think it traded above $4. And then so those are sort of the good wins.
Can I stop you for a question for a second?
Sure,
Because I find that really interesting. The spin out from Great Bear. Like, what did that do to your cost basis? Have you taken a look at that? Like, because it was pretty much a dividend for you as a shareholder then, right?
Yeah. So they did it. So the record date was last year. I can't remember when, but it was one share for every 4 Great Bear Resources shares. So I think the it was dividended out at, I don't know, pretty nominal amount, like dimes basically, and trade up above $4. John Robbins was buying it in the market. So it's an example of something that wasn't, most projects have royalties, and it's an example of creating value really where it's not going to affect the final takeover of Great Bear, the mothership, but I think it's trading at more than $100 million valuation already. Some people are critical of Great Bear because there's no resource on it yet, but I think it's going to be a great asset. It's going to be a generational tier 1 asset when things are said and done. So.
It sure sounds like a geologist I've been speaking with are speaking very highly of it, and curious to see the first resource come out, obviously. So
and then I cover some other companies that are they're less well known, and Patience I find is always the hard part in this sector, right?
Oh yeah, it is. It's like
because things move hard, right? So it's hard to there's it's a 24-hour cycle, and there's chat boards, and there's like no end of information, and a lot of it's noise, right? So it's hard in this environment to hold on to something that's not racing along with other things.
Yeah, good.
So that's where conviction.
Good point. You said chat rooms. You're obviously quite active also on CO.ca. You're active on Twitter as well at James Kwantes, and especially over the last summer, there was so much noise. It's quiet down a little bit, but how do you cut through that noise? Like, what are some of the criteria you're applying to your selection criteria? Of course, like we heard, one is that you don't like covering companies that are being covered widely already, right? So you're trying to be a bit of a unique in that regard. But what are some of the other criteria you're looking at?
Yeah, so I try to be an idea generator, right? And sometimes I'll write about, the newsletter is primarily what I'm doing with my own money, but sometimes I'll throw out an idea that I don't own or that I don't own yet. So I don't spend, I try not to spend too much time on the social media, because it's it could be a time suck, and it takes away from focus. But just so I try to cover like a smaller number of names. When I took over the newsletter, there's a lot of companies being covered, too many to cover properly. So I cut that back, which is of course a double-edged sword. So it's always fighting the the instinct to introduce new ideas and ramp up the coverage, but the more names you cover, of course, the less high quality the coverage is. And so I just try to focus on just high conviction names for me, big positions, and follow those closely.
Do you have a commodity focus? Is gold, silver? You mentioned uranium before. Is there something you particularly focus on these days?
No, I like precious metals, copper. I like uranium. I think I think we all, I mean, the fundamentals for uranium have been in place, it seems, seemingly for years, right? Um, and one of these days it'll all come together. And it seems like that might be happening now. But I'm kind of agnostic on commodity, and my biggest position is actually a graphene company.
Okay.
So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Like, I think
Mhm.
Cameco announced on Friday that they're restarting Cigar Lake. That was shut down because of COVID, not because of supply or demand constraints, I think. So I'm curious to see what that does to the price of uranium. Do you have an opinion on that at all?
I don't think it'll have much of an effect. I think uranium's going to emerge as a green energy commodity. It's already happening. Like I'm reading Bill Gates's latest book, and he's obviously a controversial character, but he's a problem solver and kind of takes an engineering mindset. And he basically came to the conclusion that you can't tackle climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, and especially quickly, without uranium and nuclear being in the mix. And he's investing in some of these startups and so on.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've
So,
been saying that for years. Because like in Germany, right, we have nuclear reactors as well. But after Fukushima, our
mhm.
chancellor pretty much snapped and said, "Okay, we're shutting down all the nuclear reactors," in a more of an overreaction than a proper reaction as well. And I've been personally saying that
Yeah,
10 years.
aren't they going back to nuclear now in Germany?
I don't. We're slow. It's like at least we're extending run times of some. So I'm not sure where we
Mm,
officially stand because it's also an election year. So I'm not
right.
sure how that fits into the political landscape these days, right? How that all fits in.
Yeah, yeah. So there's still a lot of the negative, Fukushima and everything else is still obviously reputational issues for uranium and nuclear, but there's a certain inevitability to it, in my opinion.
Now, it's like I'm a supporter of nuclear, but my only problem is storage of waste. I think that needs to be
Hmm.
solved.
That's
We need
key.
more
Yeah,
discussions
yeah.
on that, in my opinion, and that's being
Hmm.
so far been very quiet, which is a bit disappointing. There are solutions like
Yeah,
storing it in salt caves, I think, but I'm not sure if that's the ideal 100% best solution as well. So I think that's what some more
yeah,
money needs
yeah.
to go into research and maybe development as well, right? So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's obviously the big concern. Like at Arrow, I think the plan is to store it very securely underground.
I think that's
Hmm.
pretty much the only solution I've heard so far is really storing it like in salt caves or underground with dense rock, right? So
Hmm.
it can't radiate. And
Right.
let's talk about more gold precious metals as well. Like, how are you feeling the junior mining sentiment in general? Like, how are you seeing things? Like, I live in my own Twitter echo chamber, so I always appreciate having guests on. Maybe looking in from the outside. Like, how's sentiment for you? How are you feeling it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think gold and precious metals investors should be asking themselves, like, why is, you know, given what's happening, the money printing, the debt levels worldwide, like, why is gold only at, 1750 US an ounce, right? It seems like it should be higher, and I think it'll get there. So I think Bitcoin obviously is taking obviously a lot of the attention. Uh, as far as a trade, it's kicked gold's butt, but I think there's room for both. And I'm actually looking forward to this. Frank Giustra and Michael Saylor, the Bitcoin evangelist, are going to have a bit of a debate coming up. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I think there's room for both, right?
I think so as well. Like, I'm not against Bitcoin
Yeah.
at all. I don't own any, but I can see its validity in it, and it's just the next step in evolution. If everything's going digital, why not currency to a degree? Like, if you want to think
Yeah,
about
it's
that, it's hard if I have a hard time with the whole concept of digital currencies. Like, I'm not saying I'm a conspiracy theorist, but it's still a concept I'm wrapping my head around, and it starts with Bitcoin. It ends.
yeah. So am I, Kai, and I don't own any Bitcoin, but I do have exposure through a couple, kind of minor investments. But I think it's all about scarce assets, right? Which Bitcoin is, which gold and the metals obviously are. And I think there's going to be tremendous demand, for precious metals, but also for the economy metals, for example, copper, and any scarce, any hard asset in this environment, I think will do really well. But the juniors are always the last to move, and in this market, like I'm seeing, there's still some amazing value. One of the tricky things about investing in this sector is, sometimes like the pigs fly, and the companies that are great, like fundamentally very sound, run by like a top team, ticks all the boxes, and those things are cheap. And you're like, what's going on here? And I'm going to throw an example out. Talisker Resources is an example of that, in my opinion. They just raised 15 million from New Gold, and once that closes, they'll have, I think with their shares out, their market cap will be about 80 million or so. So 40 million of that's cash. They've got the Braylorn high-grade gold project that they're drilling. I think they're going to 8 drills this year. But they picked up Braylorn after they staked much of the Spence's Bridge gold belt. So I don't think they're getting any value. And I think they're going to make some discoveries there. They've been tackling that with like science-based grassroots exploration, big teams, geologists, and they sort of narrowed it down to some projects that they like. And then they've also got a 30% stake in TDG Gold, which has a project that they sold to them up in northern BC, which is worth about $7 or $8 million. Bucks. There's a lot under the hood, and it's just, but the stock's just dead.
Yeah,
and has been for a while. So that's an example of that patience and conviction.
Yeah. By the way, full disclaimer: I'm a shareholder personally, so of Talisker, I own some of those shares. So yeah.
Same
no, it's and we've been on a side visit there together. It is really interesting in how it all works, and the market just does not pay attention. Like, why don't let's spend a second on it. Why do you think that is actually? Like, let's expand on that for a few seconds here.
Sure, on Talisker specifically.
Yeah. See, like, if you can uncover like a rare gem there, like, and I mean, like, there are certain like factors that go into that, right? Like, why is the market ignoring it?
Oh yeah. Well, I think there's skepticism because Braylorn, produced like over 4 million ounces at like 16 grams per ton. It's narrow vein mining, so that some people some people just like 30, 40 grams over 0.9 meters. Like, is that mineable? But at Braylorn, like the veins are very continuous. So I think the narrow vein, but there's all they're finding gold in the wall rock there, which will help with the dilution. And they're sort of guiding to. They've talked about the maiden resource at Braylorn being somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 grams per ton, 9.5 grams per ton, which is very impressive. But they're also they're discovering new mineralization there. Like they've got this Charlotte zone, which is nearer surface and potentially bulk tonnage, lower grade. So I think it's a combination of that. Talisker, that team sort of found many of Osisko's ounces, at Windfall, and then at Barkerville. And the Barkerville gold, got taken out by Osisko, and it wasn't a great, it was a takeover during a bear market. So I think, people wonder about, Osisko has a share position. But so I think bringing New Gold in is great. They're obviously operating New Afton in the neighborhood. There's a lot of shares out, right? Talisker has, I think they'll have about 250 million shares out when this financing closes. So a lot of people will look at that and think,
I've seen worse.
Bloated. Yeah. But I think, so those are some of that. And I feel like for what their team has done, I do feel like they're not that well known, like in retail. Yeah. Terry Harbort and the guys there.
Rumbadia, the whole team behind it. Yeah. As you said, they were Osisko's technical team for the longest time until they started running their own company, which is Talisker.
Yeah, so an Anglo-American before that. Yeah. So Talisker, I think, Terry's sort of his, he's made a lot of money for other people.
Yeah.
And for other companies, and this is their deal, right?
Exactly. I think they found over 40 million ounces of gold. I think.
Yeah, like 47. I think
exactly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so big deposits down in Colombia.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot of Talisker, obviously. So you like people, you like the assets, geology seems to be sound, and it's of course an undiscovered stock, really, by the main markets. What other top picks are you suggesting to your readers right now?
Well, so I don't talk too much about macro. I don't feel like I add too much value. I sort of focus on. Try to identifying, like I said, under the radar companies, and price obviously is important, and one of the things you can control as an investor. So another company that covers NanoXplore, which is the graphene play, kind of out of the box, but I sort of found out about it through a graphite company that that hasn't sort of worked out, and so it's my largest position. It's run by a guy, Suresh Nazarpour, who founded the company, and it's graphene's multifunctional, and again here it's difficult because they're operating in a space where there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of fluffy promo plays, and a lot of companies that focus almost solely on the marketing side, and so talking about the stock channels, like some of the channels of some of these other plays that don't really have much as far as fundamentals are they're busy. There's like dozens of guys in there posting like breathless Elon Musk references and Tesla and stuff like this. So this company NanoXplore, which is GRA, they're selling graphene enhanced brake lines to Tesla. So, and on the EV side, range obviously is one of the big issues and knocks against EVs. So, look, NanoXplore is like a bigger business with other divisions, but on EVs specifically, so they're doing the lightweighting. So they own composite businesses that are basically graphene infused. So they're selling to Volvo, Daimler, Paccar, which runs Kenworth and Peterbilt, and so on. But they're also working on battery technology. So graphene, silicone, anodes are primarily graphite, but silicon sort of has better chargeability and it's a better material, but it's kind of unstable. And so graphene can have a role in silicone anodes, which I think is where things are going. So
I just pulled up the company for our viewers as well. So that's what I've just been doing for the last few seconds. Is I pulled the company up. So you're actually up. Let's look at the chart real quick. Actually, you're actually up quite a bit. Like the chart looks fantastic.
Yeah, look at the 1 year chart. But then so that that looks pretty good. And one of the catalysts there in the fall was Battery Day. Some of the things Elon Musk was talking about are things that NanoXplore has been working on for years, like the silicone anodes, for example. So with that, again, patience and conviction, right? Like the 1 year chart looks good, but now pull up the 3 year chart on that one.
All right, let me scroll up. Where we go? Technical charts, 3 years. All right.
And that stock was flatlined. Oh, and it was a flat line while the company was like progressing, adding value. Like there was such a discrepancy between the business and the stock, right? And so you almost like is this thing ever going to move, right?
Looks like there was a bit of a false start in early 2020, and then it went back to pretty much flatlining.
Yeah, but so it traded for a long time between $1.20 and $1.50, $1.60. Yeah. Spent about 3 years. So, but I went to after PDAC actually last year. I went to took the train to Montreal and visited the plant there. So they've got a graphene plant. It's actually the biggest in the world. So that's an example again of the necessity of conviction, right? Like NanoXplore used to be my largest position, and then I sort of trimmed along the way to add to other things, but it's once again my largest position. A lot of conviction on that name.
Interesting. Anything else in the gold silver space you're looking at as well? You said NanoXplore the biggest position. We talked about next gen Talisker. Give us one last name, maybe a silver company. Anybody you're following there?
Well, yeah. So there's a company called Ridgeline Minerals. So it's Chad Peters. I think you've had him on, right?
Yeah, he's been a guest a couple times. Great
yeah,
guy.
Yeah. So we were, he was with Premier Gold for a while and moved down to Nevada to run their operations there while he was with them. So I was talking to somebody and they mentioned like, hey, there's this guy Chad Peters. He's starting a company. You should, sort of up and comer. And so we connected, and so I got some of my subscribers in while it was still a private company. And so they have a silver project called Selena, which is high grade and like pretty good widths down in South Carlin Trend. So they went looking for gold and they found this high grade silver. So I think that's shaping up to be like an open pit silver oxide with gold credits story. But then they also have two really good projects near Gold Strike, and then also Swift, which is in the Cortez Hills. So it's he's a young guy. He's doing things right. And I like backing guys like that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Roller coaster ride there. You got to have a good stomach for a stock like that. It looks
Yeah,
like
that one
looking
too
at the
went.
chart. I have
Yeah,
it up on the
exactly.
screen here for our viewers as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
and you need to have a good
yeah,
stomach for that one.
yeah. It looks, things are shaping up. Like the trend the last few months is a lot better than the last half year. It's been a bit of a rocky start. He started out in the bear market too,
Yeah,
as
it's like I
sort of
remember. I think the
bootstrapped
first
it in the
conversation I
early
had
days.
with him was in January 2019. So it's taken a while to raise the money as well. I think just in 2019, like the market didn't care like about anything
Hmm.
about like
Yeah,
it was brutal. Like I remember that he was just trying to
yeah.
raise a bit of money, and he had to push it out and push it out, and then I think they finally raised the first money. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe in April instead of January or so. It's taking a long, long time. So
Yeah, yeah. So he's getting some good action there.
okay, and
But again, so I'm looking for, yeah, just you know, uh, names that I can build a high level of conviction on,
yeah, you got to put your face to
and
it.
you
Yeah,
might have to wait for it to move,
exactly.
right?
Like if they're doing the right things with good things come with time, right? Isn't that the saying?
Hmm.
Great. James, give us a bit, like, sort of to wrap this up as well. Like, what do you expect the next 3 to 6 months? Like, how convinced are you that we're actually moving in a positive direction? Are we going to, like, and I don't want you to comment on the gold price or anything, but, like, what's your feeling like for the overall junior mining market for the next 3 to 6 months? Like, how positive are you?
I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, mind you, it's been a grind. To the first half of 2016 aside, it's been a grind. So it's hard to get too optimistic about this sector. But then again, I think when you're feeling like that, the turn is probably near. So I do think we are moving into that kind of environment where finally some of these high quality juniors will move and move hard, and a lot of the crap will move hard too. But that's the way it goes.
Exactly. You got to be able to weed it out, right? And weed the. Fantastic, James. It was great talking to you. Great catching up. It's been long overdue having you on the program, and can't wait to see you actually downtown Vancouver again. Like it's been tough. The last time we saw each other was last summer. So
Yeah, yeah, or another
I'm
site
down
visit.
for that. Count me in. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me
It's
on. I
great. I
appreciate it.
forgot to ask. Where can we find more about you? Like resourceopportunities.com is the domain, correct?
Yeah, that's my website. I'm on Twitter as James Kwantes, and also the business account there, and then CEO.ca as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so reach out.
Exactly. You're very accessible, so I really appreciate that. Thanks for being available. Thanks for coming on. It was great chatting with you this morning. And
Yeah.
everybody else, thanks for tuning in. This was great. I hope you learned something. He shared some of his top picks with us, and we shared some charts with you as well, so make sure to follow up on that. And if you have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to James or myself. It'd be fantastic. Also, don't forget to follow us here on YouTube and on Twitter, of course. Don't forget to turn on the bell notification as well. We do all our interviews live. That way you do have an advantage, and I think it can be quite a bit of an advantage if we talk to CEOs and you learn something that you haven't heard before. That does make a difference. And of course, be reminded SF Online is happening this coming Wednesday, April 14th, starting at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, or 3 p.m. European Central Time. So make sure to tune in for that. SoarFinancial.com/events. 9 fantastic companies, 2 great keynote speakers, Lynn Alden and Tavi Costa. So make sure to use that as your opportunity to get some inside information and inside information into the macroeconomic environment, of course. What does monetary supply growth do for us, and what do the inflation rates do to the gold price? Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back at 4 p.m. today with an interview with an Australian company, Los Cerros. So make sure to tune in for